Welcome, and thank you for joining us here at the Urban Herald. Today we're doing a deep dive into, well, really one of the most talked about, most complex legal battles in recent memory. We're talking about the federal sex trafficking case against Sean Diddy Combs.
Yeah, and as part of the Urban Herald team, our goal here isn't just to rehash headlines. This is way beyond celebrity gossip. It's a landmark case, really, with huge implications for the music world and maybe even for how these kinds of cases are prosecuted down the line.
Absolutely. We've gone through stacks of material court documents, testimony transcripts, timelines to cut through the noise for you. We want to give you a clear picture, the allegations, the defense, the trial itself, and that maybe surprising verdict.
We're going to unpack it all. You'll hear how one big lawsuit just snowballed, what evidence really mattered in court, and, why the final outcome wasn't quite what everyone expected. It's fascinating, really, watching how power, fame, and these very private lives all collided in a federal courtroom.
Okay, let's get right into it then. The charges. What exactly was Sean Combs facing? What were the stakes?
The stakes were incredibly high. Federal prosecutors brought 5 really serious charges. Potential life in prison, kind of serious. But before I list them, there's a key legal point we need to grasp because it turned out to be critical.
Okay.
There's sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. That means proving someone was forced or tricked into commercial sex acts. It's a high bar.
Right, you have to prove the coercion.
Exactly. Then there's transportation for prostitution. That's about moving someone across state lines for commercial sex. Critically, the sex act itself could even be, well, technically consensual for this specific charge. The coercion element isn't required.
Okay. That distinction is important.
Yeah.
So what were the 5 specific charges then?
All right. First, a racketeering conspiracy charge known as RETO. This is huge. It basically alleged he ran a criminal organization from 2008 to 2024 involved in a pattern of crimes.
Like an ongoing criminal enterprise.
Precisely. Then 2 counts of sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. One involved his former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. The other involved an anonymous victim, Jane Doe.
And those had mandatory minimums.
Yes, a minimum of 15 years each, if convicted. And finally, 2 counts of transportation for prostitution. Again, one linked to Cassie, one to Jane. These carried up to 10 years each.
Wow. That's a lot. So who were the people who brought these claims forward? Who really got this whole federal case rolling?
The main catalyst, no question, was the R&B singer Cassandra Cassie Ventura. Her lawsuit in November 2023 was explosive. It detailed over a decade of alleged abuse, physical, sexual, and these forced freak-offs, as she called them, with male escorts, often involving drugs.
And that lawsuit settled incredibly fast, didn't it?
Within 24 hours, which is just remarkable for an undisclosed amount, of course. But like you said earlier, it opened the floodgates.
Right.
After her suit went public, another anonymous victim, Jane, came forward. She later testified in the trial about, very similar patterns of coercion, manipulation, feeling trapped.
So that settlement didn't quiet things down at all.
Not even close. It was the opposite. Between December 2023 and March 2024, something like 70 other civil lawsuits popped up. Various accusers, allegations going back decades.
70?
Yeah. And then things escalated big time. March 2024, Homeland Security raids his homes in LA and Miami simultaneously.
I remember seeing that. What came out of those raids?
Federal agents seized quite a bit. Multiple guns with scratched-off serial numbers, drugs like ketamine and MDMA, electronic devices. And this detail really stuck out. Over 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant.
1,000. That's specific.
Very specific. And it became part of the evidence later. Then, May 2024, CNN drops that bombshell video.
The hotel surveillance footage.
Yeah, from 2016. Showing Combs physically assaulting Cassie in a hotel hallway. It was disturbing, and it directly backed up parts of her lawsuit. Became absolutely crucial evidence.
So the pressure just kept mounting towards the trial.
Relentlessly.
Correct.
He was arrested in Manhattan September 2024 after a grand jury indictment. Then, he was denied bail 3 separate times.
3 times. Why?
The judges cited concerns about witness intimidation. Significant concerns. He set the date firmly. May 5th, 2025, no delays.
Okay, so facing all that, the lawsuits, the raids, the video, bail denied, how did his defense team respond? What was their strategy?
His lawyers, Mark Agnifilo and Tenny Garagos, entered a plea of not guilty on all counts, right off the bat. Their main argument was basically, this wasn't a criminal enterprise, it wasn't trafficking, it was a consensual swinger lifestyle.
A swinger lifestyle.
Yeah. They argued the alleged victims were willing participants. They tried really hard to separate any alleged domestic violence from the specific sex trafficking charges, which, as we discussed, have that higher legal bar.
So acknowledging some complicated behavior, maybe, but denying the criminal enterprise and the coercion elements?
Exactly. They painted him as complicated, yes, but not a criminal running some kind of trafficking ring.
All right, let's move inside the courtroom. The trial itself, May 2025. What were the key moments? What stood out?
Well, jury selection itself was tough because of all the media attention, but they got it done. Then week 2, May 12, things really kicked off with opening statements. The prosecution, led by Emily Johnson, came out swinging, described Combs as the leader of this criminal enterprise, laid out the allegations: kidnapping, arson, drugs, sexual crimes, promised evidence of violence, coercion, those freak-off sessions.
The very aggressive opening. And the defense.
Tenny Geragos for the defense basically stuck to their script. Combs is complicated, yes, but not a criminal. This case, she argued, was really about love, jealousy, infidelity, and money, not trafficking. It's all a consensual swinger lifestyle.
Okay. And then came Cassie Ventura's testimony.
Yeah, that was huge. 4 days on the stand, very emotional. She talked about meeting Combs when she was just 19, her first alleged freak-off at 22, then 11 years of what she described as physical, sexual, psychological abuse.
What kind of details did she provide?
Really graphic details. These multi-day freak-off sessions involving male escorts, heavy drug use, ecstasy, MDMA, ketamine, the large amounts of baby oil she mentioned, over 10 bottles sometimes per session. Said he videoed things for blackmail, talked about him arranging travel for sex workers across state lines.
And the settlement came up.
It did during cross-examination. She confirmed she settled her 2023 lawsuit for $20 million.
That's incredibly intense testimony. What happened in the following weeks? Did other witnesses back her up?
They did. Week 3 brought supporting witnesses. There was Israel Flores, the hotel security guard from that 2016 video.
Right, the one who saw the assault.
He testified about seeing it, described Combs having a devilish stare, and he dropped another bombshell. Said someone offered him $100,000 to keep quiet about the tape.
$100,000, wow.
Who else? A male escort, Daniel Phillips, testified. Said he got paid anywhere from $700 to $6,000 per session. Said he saw Combs directing things, saw domestic violence. Cassie's best friend and her mother also testified, corroborating abuse claims, talking about injuries they saw.
Okay. And federal agents testified about the raids, the guns, the drugs, and confirming again those huge quantities of baby oil and lubricant found. So victims, eyewitnesses, law enforcement. What about people who work closely with Combs? Did his inner circle testify?
Yes, week 4 got into that. Capricorn Clark, his former chief of staff for 15 years.
15 years, that's a long time.
Yeah. She detailed organizing logistics for the freak-offs. Said she witnessed Combs threaten to kill Kid Cudi. Mentioned a home invasion incident back in 2011.
Threatened to kill Kid Cudi.
That's what she testified. Other assistants, David James and George Kaplan, confirmed making travel arrangements, buying drugs, and also said they witnessed violence. And then Kid Cudi himself testified.
Really? What did he say?
He talked about a home invasion in 2011 involving Combs and others, and also about his car being firebombed with a Molotov cocktail around that time.
This paints a really dark picture.
Yeah.
Then came Jane, the other alleged victim. What did her testimony add?
Jane's testimony came in weeks 5 and 6. Her relationship with Combs was more recent, 2021 to 2024. She described a similar pattern, starting with gifts, then moving to sexual coercion. Described these hotel nights with male escorts while Combs watched. Talked about him controlling her financially, paying her rent. Mentioned needing 24 or more bottles of baby oil per session.
24, good grief.
Yeah. She said she felt trapped, tried to stop the hotel nights multiple times. The defense, during cross, tried to poke holes. Showed loving text messages she sent Combs, evidence she helped organize some encounters, trying to show it was mutual despite the abuse claims.
How did she respond to that?
She stuck to her story, and then she delivered really powerful testimony about a specific incident in June 2024. Described a physical assault at her home, being beaten, and then immediately being forced into a freak-off. And she provided photos of her facial injuries from that alleged assault.
Photographic evidence of injuries right after an alleged assault, followed by a forced sexual encounter. That's incredibly specific and damaging.
Absolutely. And then came perhaps the most visceral evidence. Week 7.
The videos.
Yes. Explicit videos of these freak-offs from 2012 and 2014. Over 15 minutes shown to the jury. Apparently, some jurors were visibly distressed. The content was sealed, not shown publicly.
Understandable.
Plus, they showed financial records, proof of payments for escorts travel across state lines, hotel bills showing over $50,000 in damage charges, payments to an escort agency called Cowboys for Angels. It all built this paper trail supporting the enterprise and transportation claims.
Okay, so that's a mountain of testimony and evidence from the prosecution. How did they wrap it all up, and how did the defense counter?
The prosecution really focused on establishing that pattern. The RDQ enterprise over 16 years, multiple victims showing a system, the financial trail proving the interstate element. They had, 34 witnesses over 6 weeks? Plus the physical evidence, the videos, the financial records. It felt pretty overwhelming.
It sounds. What could the defense possibly do against all that?
Their strategy remained consistent: acknowledge problematic behavior, but deny it met the legal definition of criminal enterprise or trafficking. Keep hammering the consensual swinger lifestyle angle. They really pushed back against the ICRACO charge, arguing it didn't fit, tried to frame the prosecution as exaggerating, confusing a messy private life with a federal crime. But yeah, the hotel video, the sheer volume of testimony, it was a huge uphill battle for them.
So, after all that, weeks of trial, intense evidence, the jury goes out. What did they decide?
They deliberated for more than 2 days, which tells you it probably wasn't easy. And on July 2nd, 2025, they came back with the verdict. Sean Combs was found not guilty on the biggest charges. Count 1, the ICRACO conspiracy, and counts 2 and 4, the sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion charges relating to Cassie and Jane.
Not guilty on RICO and the main trafficking counts.
Correct. But he was found guilty on counts 3 and 5. Those were the 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution, one for Cassie, one for Jane.
The transportation charges, the ones that didn't necessarily require proving coercion.
Exactly. Reports said the jury was initially deadlocked on the RICO count. Couldn't reach a unanimous decision, described as having unpersuadable opinions on both sides, which led to the acquittal on that one.
So, a real split verdict. What does this actually mean for Combs now?
It means he avoided conviction on the charges carrying those really long mandatory minimums, including potential life. But the 2 transportation convictions are still serious. Each carries a maximum of 10 years in prison.
So he could face up to 20 years total.
Potentially, yes, up to 20 years. Combs was apparently very emotional in court, praying with his family when the verdict came in. Sentencing hasn't been set yet, but prosecutors say they'll push for significant incarceration.
And the defense.
Already signaled they'll appeal the guilty verdicts. Plus, the judge still has to decide if Combs stays in custody until sentencing.
This split verdict really changes the whole story, doesn't it? What does it tell us?
It really highlights how tough it is to prove those complex RICO and forced sex trafficking charges, especially against someone with immense resources. Proving the criminal enterprise's structure, proving coercion beyond a reasonable doubt when consent is argued. It's difficult.
Right.
But the guilty verdicts on transportation show the jury did believe parts of the prosecution's case. They believed he moved people across state lines for prostitution. So while he dodged the most severe charges, he's definitely not walking away clear. There are still serious consequences.
And the impact goes beyond just him, right? What are the broader ripple effects?
Oh, absolutely. Culturally, this whole thing has intensified scrutiny on power dynamics in entertainment. More calls for protecting artists. It's definitely impacted Bad Boy Records, artists associated with him. Legally, even with the split, it sets some kind of precedent for celebrity accountability, maybe how RICO gets applied in the sphere. And socially, it just sparks huge conversations about wealth, power, justice, how we treat victims in these high-profile situations.
We saw his business empire take hits even before the trial ended, too.
Big time. That huge partnership with Diageo for Ciroc and De Leon, gone. Diageo took full ownership back in early 2024. He stepped down as chairman of Revolt TV for a while. Brands like Sean John, other ventures, partners definitely started keeping their distance. The financial fallout has been massive, regardless of the final sentence.
Now, what's the immediate future look like? Sentencing, appeals. This is over.
Not by a long shot. First, the sentencing hearing that'll determine the actual prison time, up to that 20-year max. The judge deciding on custody until then. Then, expect a lengthy appeals process from the defense. And don't forget, there are still all those other civil lawsuits potentially waiting in the wings. This story will continue to unfold for months, probably years.
It's been quite the deep dive. It just shows even when evidence seems overwhelming, the legal process can lead to really nuanced, sometimes unexpected places. This trial is definitely a landmark, however you look at it.
It really is. It forces us to look beyond the easy headlines and grapple with the complexities, the evidence, the testimony, the legal strategies, and how power and fame intersect with justice, or the perception of it.
So as we wrap up, here's something to think about. A verdict that acquits on the most serious charges but convicts on others, still carrying potentially heavy prison time. How does this kind of mixed outcome reshape our ideas about accountability for the powerful? Does it satisfy the demands for justice, or does it leave us questioning what true accountability even looks like in cases like this?
We really hope this analysis from the Urban Herald gave you some clarity and deeper insight into this incredibly significant case.
Thank you for joining us on the Urban Herald for this deep dive. Stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll be back soon with more crucial stories shaping our world.